I'm Sam, 34, a welder from Boise, Idaho, who thought family meant loyalty until my sister, Tara, torched that idea. Our dad, Greg, ran a small auto shop, Grease and Grit, in Spokane, Washington, nothing fancy, just a steady gig fixing cars and trucks. I grew up under hoods, learning from him, while Tara, 29, flitted through art school and barista jobs, never sticking. When Dad got sick, lung cancer, brutal and fast, he made me promise to keep the shop alive. I did. Tara didn't care until he died last year. I found out about the will by accident. Dad's lawyer, Mike, called me to sign papers, assuming I knew. Everything shop, house, savings split 50-50 between me and Tara. I'd poured 12 years into Grease and Grit, nights, weekends, my savings when bills stacked, while Tara hadn't touched a wrench since she was 16. I confronted her at Dad's Spokane house, now half hers, her stuff already cluttering the garage. 50-50. I said, voice tight, holding the will. I kept this place running. Where were you? She shrugged, sipping coffee, all smug in her thrift store coat. Dad wanted me secure. I'm his kid too, Sam. You're fine, Mr. Workaholic. Secure. I snapped. You didn't visit him, barely called. I paid his meds, fixed his roof. Cry me a river, she cut in, ice cold. It's his call, take it up with his ghost. I stormed out, gut churning. Boise was my home now, but Spokane tethered me, shop's lease in my name. My crew counting on me. I figured Tara'd cash out her half. Leave me be. Wrong. Next week, she showed up at Grease and Grit with a guy's slick suit, smarmy grin, calling himself Vince, her investor. They wanted to rebrand, turn it into some hipster car boutique, sell overpriced mods to rich kids. This is Dad's, I said, grease-stained hands clenched. Not your playground. It's mine too, Tara smirked. Half's half, deal with it. I checked the will again, ironclad, no clauses. Mike sighed over the phone. She's got rights, Sam, fight it, you'll bleed cash. That night, I found an old letter in Dad's desk, shaky handwriting, dated a month before he died. Sam, Tara's hiding something, watch her. My pulse spiked. Hiding what? I'd run this shop solo. She'd get no free ride. Time to dig. Dad's letter, Tara's hiding something, watch her, rattled me all night in my Boise apartment. I'd driven back from Spokane after Tara's rebrand bombshell. Her and Vince's smirks burned into my brain. Grease and Grit wasn't just a shop, it was Dad's life, my life, 12 years of my sweat welding frames and tuning engines. Tara hadn't lifted a finger, yet she waltzed in with half the will and some sleazy investor. That letter, though, it was a spark, and I'd fan it. Next morning, I called Mike, Dad's lawyer, from my shop's back office, tools clanking outside. Found a letter. Dad wrote it before he died. Says Tara's hiding something. Mean anything? Mike paused, papers rustling. Greg was foggy near the end, chemo brain. Mentioned Tara once, said she'd screwed up big. Wouldn't elaborate, thought it was ramblings. Will's still legal, Sam. Screwed up how? I pressed, gripping the phone. Dunno, he sighed. Dig if you want, won't change the split. I hung up, staring at the letter's shaky scrawl. Tara'd been a flake, dropped out, bounced jobs, but big sounded heavier. I texted an old Spokane buddy, Jake, a mechanic who'd known her crowd. Tara ever in trouble? Serious stuff? He replied fast. Heard she owed cash, shady loans, years back. Dodged it. Why? Loans? My gut twisted. Dad might have covered her. Kept it quiet. That afternoon, Tara called, voice sharp. Sam, Vince needs access, shop's ours too. Tomorrow, 10 a.m. No, I said, cold, under a truck at my Boise gig. My lease, my crew, you don't touch it. Half's mine, she snapped. Sue me, I'll win. Try it. I shot back, hanging up. She'd push, I knew it. I drove to Spokane that night, Dad's house dark, Tara's junk still clogging the garage. I rifled his old files, bills, receipts, nothing, until a locked box under his desk stopped me. Crowbar popped it. Bank stubs, $10,000 withdrawn, dated 3 years back, when Tara visited during Dad's early chemo. A note in Dad's hand. Tara's debt paid. Don't tell Sam. I sat back, pulse racing. She bled him hit it, while I patched his life. Now she wanted Grease and Grit too? No way. I'd weld this shut. She'd regret rolling in with Vince. That $10,000 bank stub and Dad's note. Tara's debt paid. Don't tell Sam lit a fire under me. I'd found it in his Spokane house, the locked box spilling secrets Tara thought were buried. She'd sucked cash from Dad during his cancer fight, Probably some loan shark mess, while I was in Boise, clueless, keeping Grease and Grit alive. Now she wanted to shop my shop with her greasy investor Vince. I clutched the evidence, my welder's hands itching to torture plan. Next morning, 10 a.m., Tara and Vince rolled into Grease and Grit like they owned it. I'd driven up from Boise at dawn, my crew, Tommy and Liz, already briefed. No access, no nonsense. Tara strutted in, boots clicking, Vince trailing with a clipboard and a smirk. Sam, she said, sharp, we're scoping, rebrand starts next week. Nope, I said, arms crossed, leaning on a lift. Lease is mine, shop's mine. Back off. Well, says half, she snapped, waving papers. Vince has got cash, boutiques happening. Half's equity. I shot back, pulling the stub and note from my pocket. Explain this. $10,000 dad paid for your debt. What was it, loans? Gambling. Her face froze, eyes flicking to Vince. That's old stuff. Doesn't matter. Matters to me. I said, voice low. You bled him dry while I worked. He hid it. Now you want this. Vince stepped in, slick. Calm down, Sam. Business is business. Tara's got rights. Rights. I laughed, bitter, showing Tommy the stub. She's a leech, Dad's proof. Tommy whistled. Liz glared. Crew loyalty locked. Tara flushed, snatching at the paper. I yanked it back. You're delusional, she hissed. I'll sue, shop's half mine. Go ahead, I said cold. I've got this, bank records, witnesses. Dad's letter says you're hiding more. What else, Tara? She faltered, Vince shifting. We're done here, he muttered, tugging her arm. She glared, spitting, you'll regret this, and stormed out, tires squealing. I exhaled, crew circling. She's nuts, Liz said, wrench in hand. What's her game? Dunno. I replied, pocketing the stub. But she's not touching Dad's shop. I called Mike. Voicemail. Found Dad's note, Tara's debt. Changes anything. My gut said no, but I'd fight. Grease and Grit was mine, not her playground. She'd hidden enough, I'd expose it all. Tara's "you'll regret this" echoed as she peeled out of Grease and Grit with Vince, but I wasn't shaking. Spokane's shop floor smelled of oil and steel, my turf, Dad's legacy, and I'd be damned if she turned it into some hipster cash grab. That $10,000 stub and Dad's note, Tara's debt, paid, were my ammo. She'd leached off him while I welded our lives together. Time to short her circuit. I called Jake back in Boise that night, voice low in my apartment. Tara's old debts, you said shady loans. Details. Sketchy, he replied, crunching chips. 3 years ago, word was she owed a guy, Tony, big cash. Bar tabs, maybe drugs, dodged him till he vanished. Heard your dad bailed her, $10K sound right. Dead on, I said, gripping the stub. She's after the shop now. Half's hers, wants to rebrand. She's ballsy, he laughed. Tony's gone, jail I think. Dig deeper, might scare her off. Next morning, I hit Spokane early, crew on deck. Mike called back, gruff. Debt's irrelevant. We'll split, no fraud. Fight her, it's court, costly. Worth it, I said firm. She's hiding more, Dad knew. I hung up, plan brewing. I photocopied the stub, note, and will, legal fuel, then tracked Tony online. Old Spokane arrest records. Anthony Russo, loan shark, busted 2 years back, released last month. Bingo. I emailed him from a burner. Tara owes you. She's cashing in, Grease and Grit, Spokane. Settle it. Risky, but if she dodged him, he'd bite. Then I posted on a local Boise mechanics group. Public, Tara's claiming Dad's shop. Half hers. Hid $10,000 debt he paid. Proof here. Not letting her ruin it. Attached scans, stub, note, shares spiked fast. She's a crook. Protect Grease. Tara called noon, furious. Take that down, Sam. Vince says it's slander. Truth ain't slander. I shot back, welding a frame. Debt's real, Dad's note too. Who's Tony? She went silent, then hissed. You're dead to me. And hung up. My crew, Tommy, Liz, grinned. Shop buzzed with support calls. Jen texted. Spokane's talking. She's pissed. Good. I'd lit the fuse. Tony might rattle her. The post burned her cred. Grease and Grit stood firm. Tara's envy was her noose. Tara's, you're dead to me, didn't faze me. Her venom was old news. Grease and Grit hummed in Spokane, my crew, Tommy and Liz. fielding calls from locals backing me after my Boise mechanics post. That $10,000 stub and Dad's note, Tara's debt, paid, were viral now, shares climbing. She's shady, Sam's the real deal. My burner email to Tony, the loan shark, was a wild card. I'd tossed it out, figuring he'd sniff her out. I wasn't wrong. Wednesday, Jen called from Spokane, voice edgy. Some guy's asking about Tara, big dude, rough. Showed up at her apartment. Vince bolted. She's freaking. Tony, I asked, pausing a weld at the shop, mask up. Dunno, didn't say, she replied. Heard her yelling. I paid it. Neighbors saw. She's rattled, Sam. I grinned, dark. Good, she's got ghosts. Keep me posted. My post had her squirming. Tony's shadow turned it up. That night, Tara texted, caps. Call OFF your dogs. This is war. I didn't reply, war? She'd started it, waltzing in with Vince. Thursday, Vince showed at Grease and Grit. Solo, sweaty, no clipboard. Sam, he stammered. Tara's out, too much heat. I'll buy your half, $50K, cash, done. Half? I laughed, wiping Grease. Shop's mind, lease, sweat, soul. She's got paper, nothing else. Walk. It's legal, he pressed, voice thin. She'll fight, court's messy. Let her, I said, cold. I've got proof, Dad's words. You're her mess, clean it. He slunk off, tail tucked. My crew smirked, Tommy, he's scared shitless. Should be, I replied, torch sparking. She's sinking, dragging him. Friday, Tara called, hysterical. Sam, some thugs at my door. $10K, he says. I don't have it. Fix this. Tony, I asked, calm, in my Boise apartment. Your debt, not mine, Dad paid once. You're on your own. You set him on me. She screamed. I'll sue ruin you. Sue with what? I shot back. Shop's mine, post true. Good luck. I hung up, her sobs cut off. Jen texted, she's packing, Vince dumped her. Tony circling. I exhaled, Grease and Grit stood. Tara's envy cracking. I'd turned her secret into a spotlight. She'd choke on it. Tara's frantic call, fix this. Rang hollow as I hung up, her panic a distant buzz. Grease and Grit stood solid in Spokane. My crew, Tommy and Liz, running smooth, clients piling in after my Boise post blew up. That $10,000 debt Dad paid, Tara's secret, was public now, her rebrand, with Vince a joke. Tony's shadow had her scrambling. Vince bailing was the cherry. I'd flipped her game, a shop was mine, and she was fraying. Jen called that night, voice low. Tara's gone, left Spokane. Neighbor saw her load a car, crying Vince's stuff trashed on the curb. Tony was there yesterday yelling about cash. She run? I asked, sipping beer in my Boise apartment, the stub and note on my table. Looks it, Jen said. Heard her scream. I'm broke. Drove off fast. Shop's safe. Locked? I replied, grinning. Lisa's mine, she's got no play. Jen laughed, hanging up. Tara's war threats, sue, ruin me, were air. She had no cash, no cred. Tony'd spooked her good. Next day, Mike rang, lawyer's tone dry. Tara called me, hysterical, says you sicked a thug. Wants to sell her half quick, cheap. You buying? How much? I asked, welding a muffler at Grease and Grit, mask fogging. $20K, he said. She's desperate, creditors, maybe. Your call. Draft it, I said, firm. Shop's mind full. No games. I'd saved years of gigs, no handouts like her. $20,000 was steep but worth it, Grease and Grit whole. Dad's legacy clean. Saturday, Tommy nodded at my phone, new post, Tara's old spoken friend. She's a fraud, owed cash everywhere, ran when it hit. Sam's a saint. Shares spiked, Grease and Grit's his screw her. My crew grinned. Liz, she's toast, Tony's her karma. That night, a voicemail, unknown number, rough voice. Sam? Tony. Tara's gone, paid me jack. Shop's yours, stay cool. I smirked, didn't care if he'd squeezed her. She'd built that debt, not me. Jen texted, she's in Portland, couch surfing, broke. Vince ghosted. I leaned on my shop's counter, Spokane's neon flickering. Tara's envy, Dad's money. My work had imploded. $20K, seal it. She'd fade. Grease and Grit hummed, mine. No echoes of her left. Tara's tailspin, Portland bound, broke. Vince gone, left Grease and Grit's air cleaner in Spokane. Tony's voicemail, shop's yours, was a rough nod, not a threat. He'd chased her off, and I didn't care where she landed. My post, the $10,000 stub. Dad's note. Tara's debt paid, had flipped the board. Her rebrand with Vince was Ash. I'd run the shop 12 years, her half was a technicality, and I'd end it. Monday, Mike emailed, papers ready, $20K for Tara's shares signed, wire, done. She agreed, needs cash fast. I grinned at my Boise desk, savings checked, $25K, hard-earned, no loans like her. I wired it, signed, sent, grease and grit fully mine by dusk. Tommy clapped my shoulder at the shop. She's out, legend move, Sam. Had to, I said, torch sparking. Dad's place, no hipster bullshit. Liz nodded, hauling tires, crew solid, business up. Jen called Tuesday, voice bright. Tara's a mess, Portland friend says she's couch hopping, whining about you, and Tony, $20K gone, rent, debts. She's toast. Her fault, I replied, leaning on my truck in Spokane. Suck Dad dry, thought I'd roll over. Nope, she laughed. Shop's yours, Vince vanished too. Spokane's cheering. Online, buzz grew, mechanics groups, locals, Sam's King, saved grease and grit. Tara's a leech, good riddance. A client dropped off a beer case for kicking her out. I smirked, community wired tight, my grid. Wednesday, Mike confirmed. Legal, shop's 100% yours. Tara's cut ties, probably scared. I exhaled, shop quiet after hours. That letter, Tara's hiding something, Dad's warning, paid off. She did debt, maybe more, $10K was the tip. I'd never know it all, didn't need to. She'd envied my grind, tried to steal it, failed hard. Thursday, Jake texted from Boise. Tara's old crew says she's begging jobs, barista crap, no takers. Tony's quiet, guess he's done. I nodded, her echoes fading. Grease and grit's neon glowed, my name on the lease, the deed, the soul. No will split, no Vince, no her. I'd welded it shut, 12 years mine, now forever. That night, I cracked a beer, shop floor cold. Tara's crash, Portland's problem. Dad's legacy hummed. I'd rooted her out, envy burned to nothing. Grease and grit was mine, 100%, no strings, no Tara. The $20,000 deal had snapped her claim shut. Papers filed, Spokane's hum my soundtrack. I'd driven back to Boise that weekend, shop paperwork framed on my wall, Dad's legacy welded tight. 12 years of my sweat, not her schemes, shown in that neon sign. Tara's crash, Portland's mess now, barely rippled my grit. Jen swung by Monday, coffee in hand. She's a ghost. Friend says she's bussing tables. Portland dive bar. $20,000 vanished. Debts. Booze. Vince won't touch her. Predictable, I said, tightening a bolt at grease and grit. Spokane's chill seeping in. Thought she'd ride my work. Fell hard. Yeah, Jen grinned. Tony's offer. Guess he got something. Spokane's all you. Shop's a fortress. Clients echoed it. Drop-off spiked. Heard you owned her. Respect. Tommy and Liz ran tight shifts. Business boomed. 15% up. New contracts. My Boise post, stub, note, still circulated. Sam's the man. Tara's a fraud. No smears from her now. Silence, sweet and final. Tuesday, Jake called from Boise. Tara's toast. Bar gig shaky. Owes rent. Whining about you. Nobody cares. You good? Great. I replied, hauling scrap at the shop. Shop's full. Crew's gold. She's history. Damn right, he laughed. Her envy's a joke. Your win's loud. Wednesday, a Spokane regular, old guy, Dad's pal, dropped his Chevy. Greg, be proud, he said, nodding. Tara's trash. You're the spine. Keep it rollin'. Always, I said, shaking his hand. Dad's letter. Tara's hiding something. Had cracked her open. I'd sealed it shut. That $10,000 debt was her root. I'd yanked it, watched her wither. Thursday, Jen texted. Portland buzz. She's couch crashing again. Job gone. Blames you, pathetic. I smirked, locking grease and grit. Her echo. Faint, irrelevant. My apartment glowed. New welder's torch. Gift from the crew. No calls. No threats. Vince dust. Tony quiet. Tara a speck. Friday, I cracked a beer. Shop dark. Spokane's pulse beat with mine. Grease and grit mine. No split. No envy. Tara gambled on Dad's cash, my grind, lost it all. Portland swallowed her. I stood tall, roots deep, hers ripped clean. Grease and grit was my castle now. Spokane's steady heartbeat, no trace of Tara's claw marks. I'd locked her out, $20, $1,000 for her half. A steal for 12 years of my soul in that shop. Back in Boise, my apartment hummed. Tools sharp, life mine. Tara's Portland crash, tables bust, rent owed, was a faint echo, her envy a burnt-out bulb. I'd flipped the switch, she'd flickered out. Jen updated me over beers Friday, eyes glinting. She's done. Portland bar fired her, caught stealing tips. Couch hopping again, friends bailing. Keeps cursing you, nobody listens. Her rope, I said, clinking her glass at a Spokane dive. Shop's thriving, she's a footnote. Footnote. Jen laughed. More like a smudge, Vince won't even claim her. You're king. Saturday, grease and grit bust. Tommy and Liz slamming jobs, new rig in for mods. A client, Clara, 32, mechanic from a Boise crew, dropped her Jeep. Heard your saga, she said, grinning, short hair tucked under a cap. Tara's a clown, you're legit. Thanks, I replied, checking her tires. Kept Dad's shop, hers now. Badass, she nodded, lingering. Beer sometime? Swap war stories. Her eyes sparked, sharp, no games. I smirked. Yeah, tomorrow 7? She nodded, drove off. First real flicker since Tara's mess. Monday, Jake texted. Tara's begging old Spokane pals. Cash, crash spot. Zilch, your post killed her rep. I grinned, welding a frame. Grease and grits neon glowed my grit. Online buzz held. Sam's a rock. Tara's a leech. Clients piled in. Business up 20%. No Tony. No Vince. Just me, crew, shop. Tuesday, Clara met me. Dive bar, Boise brew. Your sis sounds toxic, she said, sipping. Hid debt, screwed your dad, shop's yours fair. Damn right. I replied, meeting her gaze. He knew, let her warn me. She envied this, lost. Her loss. Clara smiled, lean hand brushing mine. You're solid, shop's proof. Warmth hit, not Tara's cold grab, but real. We talked. Cars, welds, scars, hours flew. Jen called later. Portland word. She's at a shelter, broke. Blames you, sad sack. I shrugged. Her envy, her fall. Grease and grit stood. Clara's spark lit something new. Tara's roots, gone. Mine, deep, growing. 2 years after Dad's will split grease and grit, and Tara tried to steal it. The shop was my empire. Spokane's neon buzzed, my name on the deed. $20,000 had cut her out. A small price for 12 years of my weld and grit. Boise stayed home, but the shop was my pulse. Business up 30%, crew tight with Tommy and Liz. Clara a steady hum in my days. Tara's envy, once a roar, was a whisper, drowned by my current. Jen dropped the endgame over coffee one Sunday, smirking. She's dust. Portland shelter kicked her, theft again. Couch crashed till nobody'd take her, gone. Maybe Seattle. Broke. Alone. Vince long ghosted. Her mess, I said, stirring cream at a Spokane diner. Shop's mine, she's nothing. Nothing? Jen laughed. Les, your post, that debt, nailed her. Spokane's yours. Clara joined us later, Jeep keys jangling, grinned sharp. Heard your sis flamed out, she said, sliding in. Grease and grit's a beast, proud? Damn right, I replied, her hand brushing mine. Dad's dream, she envied it. Lost it. Good, she nodded, eyes warm. You're the root, she's the weed. We'd been solid 6 months, her Boise crew meshed with mine, beers turned nights, real trust wired in. No Tara echo, Clara was spark, not snag. Monday, Jake texted. Tara's a myth, Spokane says she begged. Vanished. Shop's king, congrats. I grinned, welding a chassis, grease and grit packed, new hoist installed, clients raving. Sam's the man, Tara's trash. Tony'd faded, no calls, no threats, her dead his problem once. Tuesday, a Spokane old-timer, Dad's buddy, dropped his Ford. Greg cheer, he said, clapping my back. Tara's rot, your gold. Keep it. Always, I replied, oil-stained hand firm. That letter, Tara's hiding something, had cracked her. The $10,000 stub finished it. She leached, schemed, Portland ate her alive. That night, Clara stayed shop quiet. Boise stars out. She ever crossed your mind? She asked, curled by me. Barely, I said, honest. You's Dad, me gone now. This is what counts. Her smile lit. Grease and grit hummed. Her beside me. Envy's echo dead. Tara's roots uprooted. Dust. Mine, deep, powered, mine.